Hey there, Wicked Title folks. I'm Cheryl, your host today from the Wicked Title Forum. And I recently had a great conversation with Scott Dizon from Deluxe Payment Exchange about how every title company has modernized something: digital orders, e-sign, remote notarization, automating workflows. And then they all seem to hit the same wall at the finish line with trying to get money out the door. So we put our heads together and we've assembled a panel of experts to explore the disconnect between modern title workflows and outdated disbursement processes, and why that gap is quietly costing time, money, and scalability. So I am here today with Scott Dizon. He is the Director of Business Development at Digital Payments for Deluxe. We've also got Brian Colbert, who is the founder and president of American Escrow Reconciliation. Christine Mediate, she is the owner of Fit Agency, First in Title. They're an independent title agency in Red Bank, New Jersey. We've got Steve Hargraves, who brings deep expertise in title operations and system integration, having led operations at ShortTrack. And Alex Grunhofer, who is the COO of Near North Title Group. Guys, thank you everybody for joining me today.
Thank you.
Uh,
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
we talk a lot about speeding up closings, digital orders, e-sign, remote notarization, but when you look at what happens after closing, the money movement, it still feels stuck. So let's talk about what's really happening. So my first question for you is, what's actually breaking at the finish line in title agencies today? Anybody
I'll
can jump
hop in
in.
here. Never one to let an opportunity to speak go by, so I'll jump in. I think at the end of the day, the perception of risk around moving money around, and I shouldn't just say perception because it's reality, right? But that makes the consumer wary, that makes the title company introduce friction into the process to make sure we stay safe. And I think that we can kind of tie ourselves into knots at the finish line. And as a guy that works at a company that spent a lot of time thinking about this, try as we might to make this as smooth as possible, you're still introducing a concept to a consumer that can make them start to second guess and wondering if they're talking to the right person. There's just a great deal of paranoia around the movement of money, period. Mostly it takes the shape of like wire fraud and seller impersonation. But I think that is the problem, right? We're trying to do the client well by getting their money quickly and having a great closing event where we high five each other and move on. But at the same time, the ultimate death to your title agency is to send the money to the wrong guy. So that's where we tie ourselves into knots.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's been a while since I've owned my own title agency, but let me just say the printing of paper checks, it just feels so, so dated. So I'm so glad to see that we're kind of moving into a world of other options. Does anyone else want to chime in on some of the challenges that you faced with just trying to get the money out the door?
Yeah, I think I will. I think that the disbursement and the post-closing for me was always a sticking point when I started my agency. I thought, this whole process is stale. We would write checks at the table, which I said, this is absolutely nuts. And that's when I said we've got to go to more electronic disbursements across the board. And the printing of the checks, and even we've advanced in that regard. But then the printing, signing, stuffing the envelope. And I thought, I'm paying, I have very knowledgeable staff members, paying them pretty well. I don't need them doing this. This takes time away from my clients. I'd rather them be served on the phone, solving problems and getting deals closed than have to deal with printing and signing and mailing checks. So
Right.
that's
Yeah,
where
stuffing
I felt that
envelopes.
disbursement was just a very stale part of the industry and needed to be updated.
And can I comment on how unreliable our mail system is anymore too?
That's the other thing. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I hesitate to put something of value in the mail anymore.
Mhm.
My mom sent me a birthday card from Florida this year, and it took 30 days to arrive.
I bet. Yeah.
Yep.
So,
Or as everyone knows, a lot of times if they're not relying on the USPS post office because there's just security also and then just lag, then a lot of these title agencies are also overnighting the checks. So just to overnight a piece of paper as a payment and incur another whatever, 20 to $25 just to ensure that it's there is just crazy when you really think about it.
and
Sure.
that's not a sure thing either. I mean, I don't know about the rest of you, but I remember the day that the towers came down and all transportation came to a screeching halt.
Yep.
And, it didn't occur to us that first day, but the next day, and we're back in the office and we're all in a bit of shock. And then we realized that all of those mortgage payments and payoffs that we had overnighted did not arrive where they needed to be. And we had no idea how long it was going to take before those planes were back up in the air and the packages were moving. And that was terrifying. And, we've had some weather issues in recent years that have brought, some of our overnight shipping to a screeching halt as well. So, there's no guarantee there. So, we know all of this. We've all kind of hit all of these hiccups. But, I think a lot of title agencies haven't done a whole lot to fix any of it. I think it's time that we start saying the quiet part out loud. So, is this really a technology problem, or is it a trust and disruption problem? Why did you and your companies delay changing your payment processes, and what was the thing that finally pushed you into action?
I think for me that it definitely was, I wasn't scared of the technology. I sort of embraced the technology. I love it. Anything that allows more efficiency. So it definitely wasn't that. It was like I said earlier, that part of the industry is just stale. A lot of parts of this industry was stale when I came into it. I kept questioning why we do this, and the answers I always got is this is how we always done it. And I said that's insane. It's insane. Like, why are we? There's so many things, but the disbursements was one big sticking point for me, and I don't think it's really a disruption thing. I think that you have to find within every part of your process, you need to enhance it just a little bit more to make it more efficient. And, the disbursements is one of them.
I think it's interesting that, you were coming into the industry with fresh eyes, and I think you mentioned 2016 is when you came into the industry.
2009, like right
2000.
after the
Oh, that's
crash,
right.
like when,
Sorry.
yeah, people were like, why are you getting into this industry? And I thought, there's nowhere for me to go but up. So,
That's absolutely true. But
yeah.
yeah, from that outsider's perspective, that's something that you honed in on right away as being, just something that could be improved. And yeah, I think when you're
Yeah.
in it for a long time and it is just the way you do
Yeah.
it, you forget to question it.
Well, that's it. Yeah, I never worked for a title agency, didn't even know what title was. So, uh, for me, I came in with those fresh eyes and, questioned a lot of parts of the processes.
Yeah. And Steve and Brian, I think you guys are working with clients. Have they given you any reasons why and pushback on why they don't try to change and modernize how they're doing their payments?
Well, even beyond payments, it's you look at why people do things the way they're doing it, right? And it's beyond inefficiency. The friction occurs in the gap between systems, which creates massive hidden expenses. Manual bridges that are a direct tax on the agency's growth, drains time, creates preventable errors, exhausts the workforce, and it's just simple things, right? So every time an employee jumps from the title production system into a separate browser tab, they force the brain to re-index their tax. And there's data out there that shows that constant switching like that creates a 40% productivity penalty, right? So
Oh
there's that
yeah.
cost to the title agent, and it's not just an annoyance, right? It's a massive financial liability. And there's a
Yeah.
phrase out there that people call the swivel chair tax, right? So you're going from your left screen and comparing the stare and compare. And you're paying your most valuable employees to be data entry clerks when you should be empowering them to be title experts. So, I mean,
Oh,
yeah.
absolutely. Years ago, I instituted a rule where I would no longer answer the phone at my title company. And long before COVID made Zoom a thing, and people thought I was crazy. But I made fewer mistakes. I was less distracted. I got the work done faster, and I would return calls at specific intervals throughout the day. Because yeah, that disruption, it is costly.
And Cheryl, can we go back to one? I'd like to revisit one other thing just on, checks and the escrow settlement process and really hear from Brian and Alex and Christine, but just also the post-closing of just this achievement and confirming that the payments have cleared. I think that's another kind of big issue that it's kind of silent. It's kind of interesting that, on all these trade shows that I go, there's not a lot of talk about that. But I'd also just like to hear from some of the customers and Brian just on this achievement in general for the process today.
Yeah, so that's actually part of, what we look at as far as compliance goes. So, we were talking about the finish line, it used to be we're closed, we're done, there's nothing else to do. So, but it's really done now when someone independent can prove that the account's clean. So, the finish line isn't only just moving the money, it's proving that the money landed. It's proving that, that you're closing out and documenting what needs to be closed out. And even after the wire goes out, that file is not done. You have checks that are never clearing, which is why this type of rail exist in this industry, right? You have balances that sit past the cutoff statements, shortages, and then you have the things that I see as an ex-auditor, which are the stale items and the escheatable items. So one of the things that we look at, is these accounts. If you have an account that has been opened longer than your escheatment period, you have checks that need to be escheated. It's just something that happens to every agent. So having a system that is limiting your exposure and to those types of risks, to the stale outstanding checks, and to those items that potentially need to get escheated, minimizing that the time that when that's issued to when it's cleared, that's where you finish. The finish line is when that file has all of its items cleared, all of it has been documented, and everyone has been paid. Then and only then is the finish line really been met at that point.
Mhm.
Absolutely. I had a builder one time who didn't cash the proceeds from a property that he sold, and we're talking like it was like $60,000. It was a sizable chunk of money, and we chased this guy for like 9 months, begging him to deposit the check. He hadn't lost it. He had it. It was sitting right there in his vehicle,
Wow.
driving
Wish
around
I
with
had
that
that
kind of
problem,
money. He just didn't go to the bank.
right?
Blows my mind how hard it is sometimes to get people to clear a check.
Oh, absolutely. I think maybe we had the same builder. I had a guy who didn't cash $100,000 check. Oh my, God, we chased him for so long, even recut the check, sent it to him again. He didn't cash it. So yeah, that's definitely
I want to know what it's like to have that much money that you don't care about a
Right?
$100,000
exactly.
check.
I
Yeah.
wish I had that type of problem. That would be
Yeah.
great.
I had somebody whose mom had a second mortgage on the property, and mom was not in favor of getting paid. And she's like, "Oh, I've just got the check in a safe." So 2 years later, we're like, cash the check. And I think that was like 50 grand too. So,
Wow. Yeah,
Yeah,
it
we're
really
probably
is
one of the
crazy.
only industries that actually chase people to cash their check.
right.
And we want to send them the money. We want to send them the money.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. One of the other things that I've seen when I'm consulting with title companies is really a resistance to change because they've tried to change things in the past and it has gone horribly wrong, and they've had to roll it back and put the old system into place, and it costs a lot of time and money to accomplish nothing. Um, is that something that you guys have seen, either in your own business as a point of resistance, or an issue that you've encountered? What do you guys think?
Yeah, I can speak to that one. So if you read my resume, I've been in the forefront of trying to manage change management with a staff that is traditional in nature. And so I think one of the problems is the connectivity to sales slash revenue anytime you're doing change, right? So I think anyone that uses an e-check, for example, will realize how awesome and slick it is. But you're asking someone who's revenue attached and who's beneficial to your organization to make a change, and as the leader of the company or somebody in the back office, they deem that change to be insignificant. But when it's attached to revenue, people are very reluctant because it's always worked, right? And so the example I can think of is running the commission checks around town.
Mm.
Lot of escrow officers or salespeople in our organization love to run the check over to Joe, the realtor, and say, "Here you go, buddy. We closed your deal. Here's the proceeds check." That has a cost to it, right? And so you have to weigh the cost benefit thing. So, I think we as an industry always want to meet people where they are, and that speaks to both our staff in doing change management, and it speaks to the consumer and the customer, right? And I would deem the consumer to be the person buying or selling, and the customer to be the referral source or whatever. I think the beauty of the e-check thing is it's just traditional enough where it's not that weird. And so as soon as you get somebody over the hump that is basically a check that arrives instantaneously, then it becomes less weird. But it isn't like in an organization, you just drop that idea and everyone picks up on it and goes. You do need to sell it a little bit from the top
Mhm.
for the benefit of the organization, because the efficiencies you pick up, and to try to make the sales or revenue attached person understand that this does not disrupt their ability to go make themselves money and the company money.
Yeah, that's a great point. Um, and I think maybe there's also a bit of selling that has to be done to those receiving money in a format that they're not used to. You've got to overcome the trust issues. Is this really the money? I remember when I stopped taking checks in my title company. Bank checks, cashier checks, personal checks, didn't matter what kind of check. I wouldn't accept them anymore, period. They had to wire funds. And I remember there were definitely some customers where I had to explain all this to them and explain why, and they still didn't feel comfortable. They had never sent a wire before. I could only imagine trying to have those conversations when I'm sending money to them about what is this new thing. So is that something that you guys have encountered?
I definitely encountered it. I think when I brought in Deluxe checks, it was way back in 16. And my original thought process was for the real estate agents. Because I think most of the panel would agree, they're the ones who are here at the closing, and they want their check, which I completely understand. They worked with the clients for so long. My thought process for them was, come to closing, absolutely greet your client, but why sit here for an hour, hour and a half? Sometimes we're waiting for funding approval. Your time is better served moving on to the next client. Know that you will receive your commission check via a Deluxe e-check email within 60 seconds that we get funding authorization, because that's literally how long it took us to issue it. But it took a bit of selling. um, Even sent some $10 and $20 checks just to show them.
Let them
But I
try it
will
out.
say that once it took off, I mean, they just loved it, and they didn't have to wait a lot of, for the mail. I mean, I know some title agents overnight it, but even still, they would get the check that day. Um, and but it did take a little bit of time to push that.
Yeah, I could see that. Although I can say I've never ever had to chase a real estate agent to get them to deposit their check.
Never, never. That's probably the first one that clears.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I could see that as a really great selling point for a title company, to pitch to realtors that they're going to get paid faster,
Yeah,
and with less time spent on their part in order to get that paycheck. I think that's a huge selling point.
yeah.
So, we've
One
talked
thing to
about,
add, if that's all right.
no, go ahead.
I go back to a veteran from Chicago Title, what he once told me 15 years ago when we started our company in the title tech space, even before title tech was a thing. What he said was, unlike the tech community, title fears disruption. We don't want things broken. We want them better. And that's why title agents resist change, because they're tired of like integration hangovers and things that break. And you want reliable tech. So yeah, that is a barrier as a vendor that you always try to overcome with title agents, and bringing them past that fear. And I think we're there now when you have like reliable vendors that do direct integrations like Deluxe, and then middleware companies. We're getting there. But I'll never forget that quote.
Yeah, and that's a fantastic point because anybody who is in the change management world, and Alex, you mentioned that you've got some experience in that, that's a whole body of knowledge in and of itself is how to manage change within an organization. And, in most title companies, especially if they're on the smaller side, they don't have somebody employed who specializes in change management. They have people who specialize in title and they're winging the rest of it. And when you're winging a major change to your business, a lot of times you're going to run into those common pitfalls, and you're not going to allocate enough time and resources to make that change smooth, because you don't know what it's going to take. And I think the vendors who have seen the most success with that are the ones who understand that the title company doesn't have the staff and expertise to manage it. And so as vendors, they step up and say, okay, how do we make this as easy as possible for them? How do we manage the change from our side for them? And I think we've seen a lot more vendors understanding that and stepping in to fill in that gap, which is fantastic. So, we've talked about a lot of these challenges and fears and concerns that all of us as title agents experience, and they're so valid. They're rooted in experiences, bad experiences a lot of times. But we can't let those things stand in our way to building a better agency and building a better industry. So, what does it take to actually fix the payment processing system without blowing up how your title company operates? What does it actually look like?
I think providing optionality to the customer, right? You've got to figure out every way. Because I've been in a market that has gone one day from never taking wires and only taking checks to never taking checks and only taking wires. So, and it comes down to around anything around money, you know, understand what's possible and figure out how you can implement it, and, let the market decide. And with e-checks, like, it took some change management to get our people to buy in. It took some change management for our customers to buy into it. But at the end of the day, it's pretty darn slick, and the market will figure it out. When it's a good solution, it'll rise to the top, and something like this is good for your organization. So that's my 2 cents on that.
How long did it take to,
I think it's an ongoing process.
Yeah.
I've got disciples of the process in the business that like being the guy that kind of gets in the ivory tower and gets stale in this. I ran a lap around the org this morning and said, "We still love this stuff, right?" And they're like, "Why are you taking it away?" And I'm like, "No, I just need some talking points. Like, help me brush up on this stuff." So, but then there's other people that are like, "Oh yeah, I know you guys have said it's awesome, but it's that whole thing where when you're faced with getting something done that takes 10 minutes and it would take 15 minutes to fix it, but you fix it forever, closers will just keep doing that 10-minute thing because they don't think they have the 15,
Oh
right?
yeah.
We
Yeah.
never get, that's the whole working in versus working on the business, right? So you have to figure out a way to do that. This one shouldn't be that hard. It really shouldn't, right?
Yeah, and I love the fact that you said that, it's ongoing, because that's to my thinking and how I, consult to companies I work with, of, the key to successful change management is small incremental changes over time. When you try to make a huge leap at one time, you are more likely to fail or to at least run into some major challenges. So, baby step your way towards where you want to be with your payment processing, I think is probably the best route to take, so that it's, more of a transfer or more of an augmentation than a transformation.
Absolutely. I think even Deluxe will see that because, Scott, I've been pushing for the next level of Deluxe e-checks is that direct ACH without a fee. And I think
Yes.
That's going to be a game changer. You could ask any
That
other
would
bank.
be.
We will never have to take anyone's wire instructions. We won't need to know any of it. They'll get a link, they'll enter their own information, and boom, they'll have their money. I mean, that in of itself, because I know most of the panels here have been dealing with what I deal with on a daily basis is the wire fraud,
Mhm.
so I mean,
Well,
we're
you
doing
can,
deluxe e-checks for, the realtors, surveyors, attorneys. I use it even so far in my operating business. All my vendors get paid by e-check. We use the print and mail now that with the integration for recording reimbursements, which is huge. But I would love to ramp this up to seller proceeds, without the wires.
That would be
I
nice.
hear you. You
I'm
guys,
going to keep pushing you to do this.
you couldn't imagine even 3 years when I was kind of starting 3, 4 years ago, starting in this and like trying to like talk to title agencies about real-time payments. And they're like, we're just trying to get a check or wires out. So if you're not even talking to me about that, so the e-checks is a really good way, in my opinion, to disrupt the status quo. It's still a check. It rides the check rails. However, we're just being able to deliver that payment, at the speed of email, which is really good. But yes, we've got some things coming in, Christine. But as you know, we've got to kind of crawl, walk, run to
Yes.
introduce some of these things. But we really do believe that as people are, I guess, embracing e-check as just another standard payment modality out of the escrow settlement, that I feel like just even over the years that they're definitely title companies are definitely being more open to other payment modalities more than ever before. So that's the good
Yeah.
with an industry that just doesn't like change. And as Alex has just said, when you start, messing around with any kind of payment in this, people get nervous. So it's
I'm
coming.
sure.
Scott, can you tell me, what title software production systems you have integrations with?
Yeah, yeah. And that actually was probably the biggest challenge when I kind of was entered the market was everybody liked the concept of e-checks, but they basically said until you get this integrated with some of the major title production software vendors, they just didn't see the productivity and the efficiency gains. So over the years, we are directly integrated with SoftPro Select. We also have AccuTitle, Resware, and RamQuest, and certainly talking to a couple of the other title production software vendors also for integrations today.
That's fantastic. Because yeah, if I was evaluating this for my title company, that'd probably be one of the first things I asked is, can you take the data from my software and put it directly into yours? Because if we have to rekey, then we haven't gained any efficiency and we've introduced another layer of risk for typos and mistakes. So I love the fact that you have gotten some of those integrations. I would love to see some more of those. And so when you're onboarding a new customer, they have been doing wires through their bank interface, and they have been printing and distributing checks. When you've got that new customer in front of you, kind of what is that process to get them on to e-checks? Can you
Yeah,
walk me through some
it's
of the steps they have to take?
Yeah, it's pretty simple, especially with these integrations. We basically provide a URL, a personalized URL. So each one of those different title production software vendors have their own URL that their customers go to, and they basically just create a Deluxe Payment Exchange account. So there's some just authentication and who you are. They then also have to basically put in their escrow check account credentials. So we need to know if we're going to be dispersing from those escrow accounts, what that is. So they're entering that information. They then purchase a certain amount of e-checks and print and mail checks that are associated with that escrow account. And then they go into the title production system and just kind of basically do a grant access to basically say, can Deluxe Payment Exchange communicate with that title production system? And once they do that, they're off and running to be able to start sending out payments from those escrow checking accounts directly from their title production system to Deluxe as either an e-check or a print and mail service, which is where we take that same information and we will print that check out on high security stock in our secure facility. We'll put it in an envelope, we'll put a first class postage stamp on it, and basically send it out on the customer's behalf. So they still have multiple different ways to either send that out as an e-check if they have someone's email address, which then they get that payment within, as Christine said, seconds within closing, or we'll also basically send it out as a print and mail service. So it allows these title agencies to just totally get out of that arts and crafts process of printing out those checks, buying check stock, having somebody stuff the envelope, and the pricing is cheap. Like e-checks start out at 55 cents an e-check and go down with volume pricing. And our print and mail service starts out at $1.60. That includes first class postage. So when you take first class postage out, which is, I don't know, somewhere around 67 or almost 70 cents, we're actually doing
Yay.
that whole print to mail service for under $1, which a lot of title agents say, I can't do that cheaper in my operations than what you are doing it for us, Deluxe. So appreciate
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
question.
that sounds really simple. If again, if I were running a title agency today and we're evaluating that, it doesn't sound scary, which is great. It sounds achievable. And I to me, it jumping out at me is the fact that if you no longer have the physical checks in your office, you have removed one more risk point for theft and one more place that you need to have, security processes in place. So, I think that's a potential upside to that as well. And I think cybersecurity, check fraud, wire fraud, all those things really come top of mind when we're talking about payment processing. So, how other else does Deluxe Payment Exchange help to reduce that risk and improve security?
Yeah, I can talk about that, but I would actually like to hear just Christine and Alex. They're users of the e-check, the print and mail solution. So, before I jump into something, I'd just love to hear, their thoughts and their experiences on that.
Yeah, I think the deluxe e-checks, number one, what I valued most about that, it cannot be altered. And also the delivery. So is that direct rail between myself and the recipient. It's a secure email. The recipient can only print it once, so it can't be duplicated, which also I loved. So for me, that was a game changer because we've had a few checks that were altered. We picked it up on my positive pay, but with Deluxe, they cannot be altered, which that's the part I loved, and I love the secure email.
Yeah, those all sound really great. I've definitely had a few instances where checks were intercepted in the mail and then altered. And fortunately, they were caught by the bank. They didn't go through, but yeah, always a scary situation.
Sure.
One of the things that I can say is, as Deluxe hardens how the money is moved, those items that get stale and gravitate towards that achievement period, those types of things and issues don't happen as often when those things are getting paid immediately through the account. So you look at ways that it helps reduce risk. Those checks that sit on folks' accounts for weeks, months, and in some cases years, those things are now, cleared independently, quickly, and verified along the rail. So that's definitely one way that Deluxe helps with risk reduction in that sense.
Question. So, somebody receives one of these e-checks. Are they still able to do their own mobile deposit to their bank with that?
Yeah. I mean, at,
Great.
at the end of the day, those e-checks are a check. So, that's the one thing is that, we're still riding the check rails, but just being able to deliver that payment a lot quicker. So, as long as someone has your email address, a known email address, then those e-checks at the end of the day are just reconciled as a normal check. They can remote deposit capture them. They can bring them into a bank. It's a check.
Another question for you. It drives me insane when my emails get caught up in not just junk mail folders, but are actually filtered out by, spam filters at the server level. They never even make it to somebody's inbox. Um, do you have you guys had challenges with people not receiving their e-checks?
I haven't. I mean, in the beginning, well, I was using them for a long time now. So I mean, the hump that we got over, and Deluxe has been successful in this, is when I first started. I think there were a couple of banks that questioned them, but today, no issues like that, and we don't have issues with the delivery as far as email. I haven't seen any.
Great.
Me either.
Yeah, we've also, I think some people know this or not, but there are over 20 financial institutions, really large financial institutions that actually resell the Deluxe Payment Exchange to their small to medium businesses because they're also looking at reducing just the paper check. So on top of them maybe selling just the regular paper checks, a lot of these financial institutions also say, to their businesses, would you like to also be able to send out e-checks? So these banks are essentially resellers. So the amount of risk compliance and due diligence that the FIs had to do on the Deluxe Payment Exchange e-check solution was extensive for them. So if these FIs resell our solution, then it's bank grade secure, and it's just another way of these FIs kind of embracing, it's still a check, but just a different way to move that payment quicker. So.
I'm not sure if this translates all the way down into a spam filter, but I think there's some value in the fact that as a 50-something-year-old guy, I used to keep my crayons in a deluxe checkbook box. Remember those red boxes? And there is just some, I think, comfort in our industry that deluxe, is a known thing. And
Mhm.
so that's what helps you do iterative change. When you can iterate and say, hey, remember deluxe, they now do this. It's not, hey, insert name of funky sounding tech company, they now do this. I think there's some comfort in the deluxe name in that
That
regard. They help
Yeah.
you
that's
find.
Yep.
probably the number one question when I'm at some trade show and I'm talking to a title agent and they say, "You're Deluxe, like the Deluxe that I buy my check stock from," and I'm like, "Yeah, I'm the same one. I'm just in the digital payment side, trying to start reducing those checks and getting you to other payment values." They go, "Oh, okay, so we're already a customer." I'm like, "Yeah, you already are. Thank you."
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that that trust factor definitely makes a difference. You already have that comfort of knowing that Deluxe understands checks and payment processing. And so, for them to go digital is a logical next step to serving all of their dedicated customers. And, I think, all of this really is a no-brainer operationally. I mean, as a business owner, don't we always like to improve our efficiency and provide better service to our customers? Isn't that always the top goal? But we all always like a cherry on top of our sundae. So, you know,
Mhm.
I want to know, what are all of the ways that your businesses have benefited from modernizing your payment processing?
I think
Well, I could say when I started using Deluxe, it was a while back, and as a title agent, if you did have a little backlash from this new type of delivery of method. So, but I still used it in other ways. So, I think everybody could agree we're chameleons when it comes to our industry. We have to adapt to our environment. So there were closings I had at the table where, the seller's proceeds had to be brought to closing. So your closer comes and picks up your checks. Great. But for some reason, there's always some sort of issue, walkthrough issue. Maybe the CD changes, not a big deal. We could update that change in email. I use Deluxe e-checks for my closers. So if we had to recut checks, could email them, and they could print those checks out at the closing and
Hmm.
give them. So, you could also, I found I used Deluxe e-checks almost like in transition until it got to the point where we weren't actually giving checks at closing, because that to me, I just didn't agree with. But when we had to do that, Deluxe helped me in regards to these changes at closing. Because what would you do then? We would have a courier service then deliver checks to the closing. So I utilized Deluxe e-checks even during the transition.
That's great to hear because yeah, that's always a challenge when you've got an out office closing and something changes. And a great way to baby step your way into full adoption.
Right.
So what other kind of maybe unexpected benefits were there? How much time have you saved? You know, is there something else that maybe you didn't expect to end up being a benefit?
I think construction draws. So paying subcontractors on construction draws, especially when you can attach a lien waiver to the email. And in any application where you need to deliver documents alongside the check, it completely replaces the idea of a UPS and it's instantaneous. Um, the split closing concept in a bunch of my markets means that almost by definition, somebody that wants money isn't going to be there. So then there's your options, right? Wire them, overnight them a check, snail mail them a check, or tell them to come to your office. And e-checks is the easiest of those options, both for the recipient of the check and for us as the one issuing it. So I think anytime you find something that is inherently inefficient, this is usually one thing you can take out of the equation to make it slightly more efficient.
Brian, you're helping title companies with their escrow accounts. What are you seeing kind of in comparison of the companies that are using e-checks and those who aren't? Um, can you tell us the differences?
Yeah, so quite honestly, it's their audit risk. A lot of times when an agent gets audited, they have line items that have to be followed up on, and a lot of those revolve around outstanding stale items, and whether that's recording checks or individual checks. All of that information needs to be documented, and it needs to be proved that it was ultimately cleared. So it is in in this industry, having the ability to send the payment and have those clear in a timely fashion definitely decreases the amount of audits that you have to go through as well, right? I have clients that used to have audits that lasted an entire week, and now they last for only half a day. It's a lunch call, and that's because they're using these types of tools that we have now to be able to minimize their exposure and risk with regards to these items that just remain on their accounts for weeks and years in some cases.
An
I got a
easier audit? Like I'm sold right there. Easier audit. Like,
Right?
does life get better than that?
It really doesn't. Like I said, the exposure risk for, and I think escheatment is probably the biggest thing that I see is, like I said, if you have an account that is open for 5 years and your escheatment law in that particular state is 5 years, you have items that have to be escheated. And that is an entire process that I'm not sure if any of you that are here have gone through, or any of the folks that are listening to this. It is a very large, arduous process for each individual check that you have. So if you can minimize that risk and minimize the time and money that you're going to have to spend to get those escheated to the state, I'm all for it. Minimizing your audit risk, remaining compliant, and then passing audits. Those are all things that this type of service provides.
I'm curious with Christine and Alex. I have some title agencies that when those checks are nearing achievement, instead of, printing out that same paper check and sending it out the same address, they're using e-checks if they have an email address. And then they obviously get some added benefits where, we'll automatically send multiple reminders over a 90-day period. But Alex and Christine, are you guys doing anything with e-checks to kind of minimize that achievement and minimize your stop payment fees where you would otherwise just send that same paper check out again and just kind of cross your fingers and hope somebody's going to cash it this time?
Well,
Short
yeah,
of
I mean,
short of putting the money in someone's palm and driving them to the bank, it's the easiest way to say, take the money. It's yours.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we're going through escrow account stale checks, and we're sending two forms now with Deluxe, the printed mail or e-checks. But I would say more recently, because the printed mail is so easy now with this integration. I can't. I mean, I have my niece in here, and I'm training her, and just went through how to do a print and mail check with the integration. And she clicked a button. And I said, okay, you see that? You just printed a check, signed it, and put it in an envelope and put a stamp on it, put it in the mailbox. It took 3 seconds. So I think that we're starting to see that we're getting out the recording reimbursements or final water escrows or what have you, whatever we're holding. We're doing it a lot closer to the closing, which I think we're having more success in people cashing the checks, because it's close to their closing, it's fresh in their mind. So I find that's going to eliminate a lot of what I will have to escheat in the future. But we are still using the printed mail and the email, because we keep sending it. We want these people to cash the checks.
I think you make a great point about getting active immediately after the closing or as close to it as you possibly can. People forget about it and then they will take a random check that shows up to be a scam. And so the
Yes,
closer you can
yes,
get, so, people are so paranoid, and again, rightly
yes.
so. The closer you can get to the actual event, they're like, "Oh, XYZ title company, yeah, I just bought a house. This must be from that." Right?
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Great point.
Yeah, so I've been kind of testing it lately, and I mean these checks are getting cashed, and we're using, we're heavy on the both e-checks and printed, but the printed mail has been, I mean, amazing. And for anybody who was even considering Deluxe, even if they saw it with that printed mail service, to transition them into the digital e-check. I think that in and of itself will show the beauty, of this product, uh, of how much time you could save. I mean, it's all about, it's everything I do is to shave time off my staff's time so they could be on the phone with the clients and, answering questions, believe it or not, that are never really title related, or holding
Yeah.
their hands, or, buying a house is very emotional.
Chris, and I know Christine, when I was talking to you, it probably had to be over a year and a half ago when you first started using integration, and I sent you that little ROI calculator just for kind of giggles about, hey, fill this out.
Yeah.
And one of the other added benefits that I always tell people is just the actual savings or ROI for honestly how cheap this is for the print and mail service that we do or the e-checks. I mean, there is significant ROI and savings just by doing this than just buying your own check stock and envelopes and having an admin, do it the same old thing that they've always been doing. So there's definitely a lot of other tangible benefits that we've seen that I think Christine would basically echo what she's seen.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's like, it's not hiring another person, basically, and like I said, I want my staff on the phone, with the clients, uh, because that's bringing me more business, and, I want to keep their time away from this more manual type of labor, where I feel that, they're too smart to do. So I'm always find efficiencies. I always call it the grunt work. I really don't want them doing the grunt work.
All this talk about printing and mailing checks, and it's bringing back so many memories of sitting in line at the post office on April 15th trying to get my daily mail into the box when everybody
Mhm.
else is trying to send out their taxes, and trying to train staff and having them stuff an envelope with a copy of a payoff from one mortgage but the check for the other mortgage, and so many issues that you just wouldn't even have to face anymore. Heck, even just standing in line at the post office to buy postage. Nice to see that none of those are things that we have to deal with anymore. I love it. I love all of it. Thank you everybody for being here today. I've got a couple quick final questions for you. The first one is, if somebody listening to this is still kind of doing that manual print checks, mail them kind of process, send wires, and they wanted to get started with e-checks, where do they start? What's the first step?
I'll answer it. Go sign up.
I
Yeah.
I was leaving the door open for you, Scott. I knew
Yeah.
you needed to walk into that.
Yeah, I would literally, obviously, hey, get in contact with me, Scott.Dizon, Dizon at deluxe.com. My cell phone is 470-550-6488. I'm sure Cheryl will probably post something like that.
Yep, I'll put
Um,
that in the description on the video.
you guys have obviously, heard, but I really appreciate everybody that's been part of this. But that, that would be, they're hearing good things. I've got lots of other referenceable accounts, but I really do appreciate Christine and Brian and Alex and Steve and Cheryl for putting this together. But yeah, just go try it out. It's a very cost-effective solution. It's very cheap to get started. You're just buying kind of like a thing of check stock or some checks with that. And every one of the different title production systems that we support, SoftPro, AccuTitle, Reservoir, and RamQuest, all have basically just a personalized URL that you go to get started to sign up for this integration.
Nice. And one final question. Knowing what you know now, if you could go back in time and give your past self some advice about your payment processing, what would it be?
Okay, I'll answer. Well, I would do the exact same thing I did. Look for, find in your process is always something that can be enhanced, and you start there and then you build upon it. For me, it was easy to switch to Deluxe. I mean, I was searching high and low, uh, Googling like crazy, trying to find. I was like, there's got to be a better way to do this. And I just stumbled upon the Deluxe website. And I was like, okay, I associated Deluxe with checks. I couldn't believe it when I found it. I was like, I got to try this. And it's been a while. It's been a while. And then, slowly, I guess other agents got on board with it. And thankfully, it's integrated with my software. I could use the other feature, the print and mail. So I would say anyone who's reluctant to go use it, rip the Band-Aid off, try something new. Because the more agents, the more people that get to use it, then I could push Scott to go to the next level where we need to go.
I was just reading through some notes I had and from a previous conversation Scott and I had, and I had been bugging him for years to get that enhancement. So I'm glad that I wasn't the only one, because I think another person in my org that we didn't work together was also bugged. So there must have been like a cadre of people that were encouraging Deluxe to modernize. And to their credit, they have been, and they're going to keep getting better on this thing. So I think maybe that's the other thing about this is just get started. Every title agency needs to get started on something techie. And, God forbid you haven't done it yet because it's been a minute, but this is something that's just not that hard. And so there's benefit to your larger org to be able to say you're doing this for your people, because they should see that you're trying as a manager or as management in your company if you can get something that's rolled out like this rolled out.
Yeah, it sounds like a really low barrier to entry for making an improvement.
Mm-hmm.
And to that point, the future of the industry isn't about working hard, right? It's about working together, system to system, data point to data point, through integrations like Deluxe has put together with your title production systems. And so you don't want your software investments looking like isolated islands. Let's go back full circle here. You want to eliminate that swivel chair tax. Let your technology do the heavy lifting.
Absolutely. Yeah, work smarter, not harder. That's where the money is. All right. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it. All of your information and links for all of this will be in the descriptions and on Wicked Title Forum. So, anybody watching who wants to reach out to any of our panelists, you'll be able to find their information.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Cheryl.